if I'm losing, like 5, 10, 15 cents per click on a few bots, who cares? If I'm losing like $3 per bot click, that hurts me.
How do you actually acquire customers profitably?
To run actually paid ads, I couldn't see it as viable, to be honest. So you have to think about your ICP. What's on the agenda right now, like this week? What's on the to-do list? I think my number one advice would be...
Uwe Dreissigacker, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot for having me on the show, Ryan.
So you and I have been friends for a little while now. Listen, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you tell me a little bit about your two businesses, Invoiceberry and BlogHandy? Who are they? What are they and who are they for?
I'm Uwe, originally from Germany, where I also started a few businesses in the past when I was younger. And that sort of was the starting point of the idea of Invoiceberry, which is an online invoicing software for small business owners. Because back then, I actually didn't create any invoices for my business partners until the tax man knocked on the door and asked for them. So then I created them, and actually the following year, I changed my laptops. I lost them again, and, in Germany, I think you have to keep your accounting records for like 10 years or so. So yeah, that was an issue. And so the idea of a cloud-based invoicing software was born back then. And when I moved to the UK, and after my studies, I decided to actually create Invoiceberry. And, that's how it started growing. It's now actually 15 years ago since I started it. And probably, so one of our earliest marketing tools at Invoiceberry was SEO and content marketing. And probably we will talk a bit more about that later. But back then, the only solution for that was, so we had a custom coded website. Everything is custom coded at Invoiceberry. And then we had to have a blog, and we decided to go for WordPress because that was the only option back then. And except maybe custom coding something, but I never liked it. So for probably 10 years out of those 15 years, I really disliked WordPress, but it is what it is. And then finally, a few years ago, probably 5 years ago, I decided there has to be a solution. And I sort of developed that idea of BlogHandy. And then around 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I started programming it. And we launched it a couple of years ago. And last year, it got really serious. So BlogHandy is a no-code blogging tool. You can just drop like this one piece of code into your website, and it automatically loads a blog. It's SEO optimized. It comes with sort of an analyzer or helper within the writing editor. And it comes with a Google indexer to automatically send you blog posts. So it's sort of fully integrated and SEO optimized. And it just gets you started with, your content marketing very quickly. And it nicely integrates with existing website builders, custom coded websites, and also no-code tools like Bubble and Webflow and so on.
I think sometimes as a non-technical founder myself, I was always told that, WordPress is super easy. You can make all the changes you want to it. And then when you actually get into the nitty-gritty details, it's not that easy to work with. I know it's easier now, and I know a lot more about it now. But it certainly feels like there are a lot of people that are in a boat where, I need a blog on my site. I don't have a developer, or I don't have the resources to be able to set all that stuff up, or I can't use WordPress, or I can't use whatever else. And this sounds like a really cool tool to solve that problem.
I actually think it didn't get easier. It got more complicated, but you feel it got easier maybe because you're more used to it. But actually, if you look at it, so even when we started developing and designing BlogHandy, we tried to keep some of the user interface parts more like an early version of WordPress, which was just simple, right? And if you look at all the plugins you can choose from, and you don't know if there's a security risk and so on. So nowadays you have more themes, more plugins, more customization, but it actually gives you also a big headache at the end of the day.
I agree. You see that with a lot of SaaS products, though. So one pattern that I've seen a lot lately is people will start off with a SaaS product that does one thing really, really well, and it's super easy to use, and you go in and then they decide, hey, we need to move up market, we need to charge more money. For us to charge more money, we need to have more features. And then so they cram in all these features into the same user interface, and then it just gets really cluttered and difficult, and this thing doesn't work, and this thing works in some really bizarre way that anyway I won't go. I can bitch and moan all day about that, and I'm going to try and not mention specific tools. I'm going to try and keep this above board, but I'll avoid that. But tell me a little bit more about getting some traction for both of these. So I know one of the things a lot of people listening to this might tend to struggle with is just, how do I get my first customers? Or, if, maybe I've got a few customers, but that channel is no longer working anymore, and I need to find something else that works. So how do you get traction for Invoiceberry and BlogHandy? Actually, you know what? Let me ask you a better question.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a very spicy question, Uwe. Both Invoiceberry and BlogHandy have fairly low ticket prices. I think Invoiceberry starts at, $15 a month or something like that. How do you actually acquire customers profitably at that price point?
So especially at Invoiceberry, the idea is obviously that the customer lifetime value is way much higher, because we do have some customers that leave us after 12, 13 or 14 years. So out of the 15-year history of Invoiceberry, I think the longest served customer is with us for 14 years now. So even the $15, or in his case, he's a UK customer, though the £10 a month, it's equivalent several £1,000s now. So obviously once in your, and the reason why he left is because he closed down his business, he retired. So, there's nothing I can do about that. I'm very happy. I just, congratulate him on his retirement. And the reason is because it's a sticky product. So I think if you have a sticky product, if you have a product that people don't want to change because they're comfortable with it, and then it also depends on the customer. So in Invoiceberry's case, our number one reason for people leaving is because they close down their business. Either they retire or they close it down. And the number two reason is they outgrow the solution. So sort of coming back to what you mentioned previously, if we had a more complex solution, which then ends up being a fully fledged accounting tool, we could serve them. But that's not what we're trying to do. We rather have them leave and even recommend them an accounting package, which might be a competition, but I don't see it as a competition. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to serve this market of business at Invoiceberry that just it's a small size, and they either want to stay small, or whenever they grow, we help them to find the right solution. And I think that means that a lot of people stay with us for a long time. So even if we only charge $15 a month, they might end up staying with us for 5+ years. But obviously, it's hard in such a ticket size to say, hey, let's do onboarding calls and so on. But we still actually offer them sometimes to people just to learn a bit more about the customers, and obviously how they're changing over the years and how their requirements change. But obviously, a lot of the marketing is based on SEO, on lead magnets, on downloading different templates and ebooks, on blog posts and so on, like the whole content marketing. And that's one of the things I'm an expert in. I became an expert over the last 15+ years of doing content marketing. And obviously the nice thing is you produce your piece of content once, and you can, with every sign up, technically the cost of that, content just like shrinks a tiny bit more. And we have some blog posts that, are 5 years old, 6 years old, and they're still generating signups. We have some, lead magnets that we created even more than 5 years ago, and they're still generating signups and, new payers. And that just, that drives down the cost of acquisition. But obviously, what some of our competitors are doing to run actually paid ads, I couldn't see it as viable, to be honest.
That's really interesting. I wonder if the reason why a lot of companies sort of not feature bloat, but they they feel like they need to charge more money. So they have to move up market. So they have to add all these features in order to justify the price. I've seen that happen quite a lot with VC-backed companies. They'll sort of enter a space. The bootstrap competitors freak out a bit because they've got much deeper pockets. But then they're under so much pressure to move upstream and work with bigger customers or enterprise customers. They have to charge a lot more money. And so they aren't able to serve kind of the small and medium size of the market, and it sort of feels like that's exactly what you've been able to capture with Invoiceberry, especially if your product's that sticky. That's amazing. I think most people would probably kill to have a customer lifetime value of 5+ years. That sounds really good. So especially if you're able to do that without any without many sales calls or onboarding calls, it's all done through lead magnets, through content marketing, just a really slick onboarding process and just a really good product. I think that makes a huge difference. So how do you juggle growing Invoiceberry alongside BlogHandy, and you're also a father as well. You've got a family. So how do you juggle all three of those responsibilities and still get enough sleep?
Well, the question is if I get enough sleep, to be honest. But yeah, so that's a very good question. So in theory, I'm trying to focus on one or the other business a bit more from time to time. And especially with Invoiceberry, we have a very good structure. It just runs, right? We don't have these growing pains of having bugs in the system after over 15 years. So at least from the technical part, and as well, as you mentioned, because we're not trying to bloat it with features. Whenever we get feature requests, I try to really analyze if it makes sense to add this. And we're very slowly adding only things. And this comes back to, like over 15 years ago when I first time read Getting Real by Jason Fried and DHH from Basecamp, because I really like the idea of having a very clean and minimal and simplistic product. So because of that, we have not that much development work at Invoiceberry, but obviously still all the marketing and operations, but it's quite smooth over the years. We implemented a lot of SOPs, have some VAs and so on. At BlogHandy, obviously, it's a bit more changing all the time. And as we previously discussed, because we're working with all these different platforms to add a blog to your website, and we might be working with Cloudflare and Bubble and Webflow and Cart and like hundreds of different website builders and no-code builders. So it can sometimes happen that someone changes it and like a number of our customers have an issue and they say it's our mistake, even though it's, maybe another partner's problem or bugs they introduced. So it does get a bit more hectic. And how to deal with that is a very good question. Like, there definitely have been some burnouts in the past, which I don't recommend, but, they happen. I think what I'm trying to do is nowadays to have a to-do list that is only 50 to 80% of what I really want to achieve. Because usually there's always something burning somewhere. And even aiming sometimes for 50% in a day, I don't even get that done because there are like a number of other things burning that need my attention. On top of that, I know that kids, get ill and things happen. So there's always some family dynamics as well to take care of. And I'm just trying to expect that I get done less, because it's then a quite nice week when I realized on a Friday, I actually did achieve these points that I didn't really plan to achieve. Otherwise, it's a sure thing to, show path to burnout, which happened a few times in my life. And it's not recommended.
I've had that happen a couple of times as well, and I think that's the thing that probably affects a startup the most, is like if the CEO's burnt out, everything else kind of falls apart. So I think we all have a tendency to just work and work and work and work and work, but you can't. can't do that. So I have a friend named Chris, and one of the things that he always talks about is especially when you're first starting out, it's not just that everything's on fire all of the time. It's that you have to, as the CEO, you have to decide which fires to put out and which things can you just let them burn for a while and just accept that it's not going to be perfect for quite a while, and you don't have the time or the resources to actually fix it. And he said it's the most frustrating thing when you've got a bug in the software, or you've got this feature that customers are asking for, and you know that it's a problem, but you just don't have the resources to fix it right now, and you know that you're losing customers as a result, or you're failing to convert customers as a result. But I think that is just part and parcel, especially if you're bootstrapping. There's 24 hours in a day. You've got the resources that you've got, and it's all about prioritization. How do you structure your week? Out of curiosity, do you have? So, for example, I try to have days where I don't have any calls. It's really hard to do, but I try and sort of cram all my calls onto a few days of the week. And I usually find by the end of back-to-back calls all day, I'm pretty knackered by the end of it. But that gives me a few days of a week where I can just focus on doing actually sit down and bash out that work that I need to get done myself. Do you have any sort of little hacks like that?
Yeah, so I'm just thinking. So on top of running the companies, I also decided last year to do a bit of fractional work and to actually do some mentoring on Growth Mentor. I think the platform as well. So I really got into these calls because what I realized, for me to sometimes clear my mind and to get energy, like while an Invoiceberry or BlogHandy customer call puts me into the position of I need to deliver, I need to figure out an issue for a customer, which energizes me but also takes energy. So it really depends on the call and the day. But when I'm doing a mentoring call, there's still a bit of stress because I really want to deliver, but at the same time I get completely new energy into the room. So I actually started doing a lot of those calls on purpose throughout my week. But now I realized it got a bit too much. So I tried to push all my calls as well into one day, which 1 or 2 days a week. Unfortunately, a lot of them are on Monday, which is not the best, I think, thing to do to start your week, but it just happened like that. But yeah, other than that, I try to, as soon as I get into my co-working or my home office, I try to sort of create a list of tasks for the day. I don't do that the night before. I do that in the morning usually with a coffee, and I do a bit of journaling just to get some thoughts out. And then it really depends. I try to have some days where I'm more focused on BlogHandy, some days where I'm more focused on Invoiceberry, and then within that, it really depends what's happening in the business. Can I focus that day on marketing alone? What often happens that I have a bunch of recurring marketing tasks, if this is outreach, checking analytics, like doing a bit of research, and then to have a project. And this project could be some programming related stuff, product development, or this could be like a new marketing project, maybe setting up cold email outreach to partnerships and integration partners. So I'm trying to build the structure of some sort of smaller recurring tasks and like one project per day. But especially with programming, this obviously might be multiple days in a row, that project, depending how big it is. But I'm really trying to get projects as small as possible nowadays, that I can ship, if it's marketing or coding, that I can ship it by the end of the day just to finish it. And for example, at the moment we're working on new landing pages and landing page copy at BlogHandy. So in an ideal world, we would be shipping just one new landing page per day rather than getting it all done and then shipping after a week or two. So to sort of do incremental small changes, because otherwise I also, my head is full of information and I just forget what has been done 5 days ago. And if I can just keep shipping small increments and already get some feedback from customers, that usually works better.
We used to have a system back when I was running So for context, so Startup Source used to be a marketing consultancy, and we work with a lot of early stage funded startups, and
Right.
we'd work out different, we'd figure out a marketing system for them, then we'd systemize it, then we'd recruit and train someone a bit more junior to run that system, and then kind of move on to the next marketing channel. So we did that. That was a pretty good model. We did that for a while. So we used to have, when we were juggling that for like 4 or 5 different clients at a time. So it all got a bit chaotic. So we had this system that was set up in Trello. And the rule that my old business partner used to have is like, so we do tasks that consist of 30 minutes. If it takes you longer, if you think it's going to take longer than 30 minutes to do that task, break it down into smaller tasks that are only going to take 30 minutes. And it sounds like a weird thing to do, but we'd get to the end of the week and you'd look at the done list and be like, I actually did a lot of stuff this week. Okay, and you feel a lot more motivated. I think sometimes when you look at a to-do list and you never end up getting to the end of it because everything you do one thing and then you add 3 more things to the list. It can get a bit not demotivating, but you never quite have that feeling of accomplishment that keeps you going.
It also helps you with
and I
content
think
switching. I say like context switching. Like if you think about it, because sometimes you just have maybe half an hour or an hour before the next call, or before I need to pick up my son from tennis, or there are just these things in the calendars that are blocking it, and then you have here 45 minutes, there 1.5 hours, and even if it's maybe a 3-hour deep work project, if I can break it up into pieces, because some pieces might take longer, and just to complete it rather than later get back into it, and again you need to find this context, and it might take you 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes to get into it, and it just takes a lot of time. So I started doing that already years ago with sort of business and marketing tasks, but only recently I also did that with everything, including product features, where I'm trying to take a product feature, and even if I know it's going to take 20 hours of development time, we're going to break it down into like 1-hour tasks, or even if possible half-hour tasks, which is sometimes difficult, but I think the extra time spent on trying to break it down helps, and to ship like very tiny pieces of it, at least to the testing environment and to test it and so on, rather than waiting for this massive project. And we used to have that at Invoiceberry, where we would work for 6 months on an update, and then the shipping itself would take 2 weeks just to ship that and to get it ready, right? And nowadays we don't have that. We do something, we update it, we have a project, we update it, and we don't just collect, we could add this to the update and that to the update, and then the 2022 update became the 2023 update, and it just doesn't make sense, right? And you don't know where the bugs are and what the issues are. And so I'm a big fan of this sort of like just continuous development and just continuously trying like these small experiments within the product development as well as the marketing itself.
I want to switch tack now and just talk a little bit more about the marketing side of things. So what's interesting is I've interviewed a few founders now, and every single one of them has a different marketing mix or a different thing that's worked for them, or a different technique or tactic or whatever. So I guess I've got 2 questions. The first one is, what have you tried marketing wise that did not work, and why do you think that didn't work for you?
Tried paid ads, so that are a very long time ago Google ads, and also Facebook ads, but that's also quite some time ago. I think with Facebook ads it was mainly retargeting ads, and that didn't work. I think because of the cost of acquisition, and also probably my lack of experience, and I probably should have tested more. Everyone talks about testing your ads and so on, and probably I haven't done enough of that, but I couldn't see anything working, and I didn't get an agency involved. So, but yeah, paid ads, I've stayed away, and it's just naturally not really where my experience lies. Even over 20 years ago, when I started my online career, I never got into paid ads, and I think since then I have this sort of aversion to it. We used to not be good in social media marketing, or we used to be good, then not good, and now, especially with BlogHandy, we get a lot of social media attention. So that sort of has its ups and downs. But yeah, we're making a return to social media as well, partly. But that's as well, I think it's similar to paid ads. If you get into it with social media, I got back into it, and it's not just setting up like some Twitter spam bot, but actually getting into it and adding value to the social like network and to the community, and it actually works, right? It's not like going on Reddit and posting a link and getting banned, but actually adding value to the conversation. And now, for example, at BlogHandy, we see a lot of Reddit signups because we're actually adding values there. So I think it's because I invested the time as well. So I'm wondering, if I were to invest time into paid ads, would it work or not? I do feel if you have like low ticket SaaS, it's very tricky to, make paid ads work and to make a profit at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think you have to really be confident in your numbers and knowing your lifetime value and everything like that, because it's probably going to cost you a lot of money to acquire a customer up front, and you're going to have to keep them for a very long time to be able to make that stack up. I think I did a lot of paid ads when I first started. I kind of cut my teeth on copywriting, paid ads, conversion optimization. That was sort of my core skill set. That said, I generally advise early stage startups, even if they're funded, to stay away from paid ads, at least as a sort of step one when it comes to marketing. I think the reason for that is that when you're first starting out, you haven't figured out your messaging, you've got some semblance of product market fit, but you really haven't figured that out at all. And you can burn through so much money so quickly if you're just sending unoptimized ads to an unoptimized landing page to a very half-baked product.
I think that happened for me. I didn't even have a landing, like back when I tried, I think Facebook ads for Invoiceberry, we didn't even have a landing page. We just sent back to the homepage. There was not a landing page, not a landing page optimized for Facebook or anything. It was just a sign up on the homepage, and it just didn't make sense, right? But it's also very interesting what you're saying about the messaging. And I think we're maybe a bit more old school there, because I know that a lot of people who bootstrap, or a lot of people who build MVPs say, oh, before you build an MVP, build, just run some ads to a landing page and try to sell it before you build it, and, fake sell it and whatever. And I'm actually in a different camp. I like to build and have a product before I sell it, which you obviously have to have a lot of confidence that you can sell it later on, which I have, and that I'm adding value to the table, and that it's not just some rubbish product, or that just some, that doesn't make sense. But I do see a lot of people actually, and so I'm very happy to hear from you that you're also sort of recommending to not start with paid ads, because I hear a lot of people, they say start with paid ads, and I feel, I don't know, then it's more about how good is your paid ad rather than are you solving a real problem, and are you, producing a good product. It's itself just half of the story and more of the sales part, rather than are you adding value to the, ecosystem and to the business.
I think the paid ad stuff. So when we were working with companies that had raised a bit of funding, quite often they'd done these sort of one-shot marketing things. So for example, they'd launched on AppSumo, or they did a big PR blitz and they got a bunch of signups, or they emailed everybody that they knew. But that's sort of something you can pull the trigger on once. And what they were struggling to find was a scalable and a repeatable marketing system to bring in customers consistently. One thing that was useful, if they had the money to do it, was to do a whole lot of demographic targeting on Facebook ads, because you could get really granular about, are they male or female? Are they living in this city or this country, or that? So you could test a whole lot of variations, but that wasn't necessarily to acquire customers. That was just to figure out who is most likely to be interested in this thing. And I think that's, sometimes people get those two concepts confused. They think, okay, well, we're going to use paid ads to acquire customers versus we're going to use paid ads to do a whole bunch of like quick and dirty tests to give us some idea of what our, if we've got these sort of 5 different ICPs, ideal customer personas, let's quantitatively figure out which of them is most likely to, to take some sort of an action. But again, it's, just because they click on your ad or they go through to your landing page or they download your lead magnet doesn't mean they're going to be the perfect fit in terms of a customer. The other point there that I think is really interesting is a lot of that idea. I have strong thoughts about, just set up some ads, drive them to a landing page. I think that comes from Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Work Week and all that kind of stuff. But in that book, how old's that now? He's talking about getting clicks for a few cents. Okay, when you've seen the cost of ads lately, if you could just get a few cents to drive someone to a landing page, sure, you can do a quick and dirty smoke test that way.
Yeah.
But in most sectors, and especially SaaS and especially B2B SaaS, you're looking at a cost per click that's, several dollars, more than $10. It gets really
around
expensive.
for a long time, and I used to have ad-based products, right? Online games 20 years ago, even over 20 years ago. So I know, like back then, right? So CPC, the cost per click, used to be like you said, quite low, and really depending on the product, you could go really low, right? But I mean, nowadays, like you said, several dollars. You don't even know how good the quality is. There's still a lot of bots out there and whatnot. So if I'm losing, like 5, 10, 15 cents per click on a few bots, who cares? If I'm losing like $3 per bot click, that hurts me if I'm charging $15 a month to a customer, and that customer still maybe wants a 50% discount for the first few months. It has a 30-day free trial, and so on and so on, right? So it's going to take me over a year to recoup the cost of customer acquisition. And I think with that, unless you get into, say, sometimes when they launched Quora ads or Reddit ads a few years ago, I actually tried it again because it's a new platform. Let's try it. Probably the cost is low, but actually even those platforms, they were maybe a bit lower than Google ads and Facebook ads when they launched. Just, they have to launch, they have to do a bit of an offer. But to be honest, they were already set high from the beginning, so it didn't make sense. I mean, we're talking about a couple of $100. I would invest like maybe $200 or $500 to do some tests, but it would just result in nothing. And so I think nowadays it's a very difficult thing. And I think actually a lot of the whole ad thing comes from the e-com guys, because they're with the drop shipping and, e-com and doing their Facebook ads, and obviously spending hundreds of thousands of dollars, some of these drop shippers per month on Facebook ads. I think that's sort of swapped over to some SaaS people. At least that's my assumption there, right? I don't really see it working. And it also depends. Like you said, if you're a VC-backed company, it's all about speed, right? Because you have like your runway for, 12, 18 months or whatever, and you need to get users, or you just burn and you close down the company. But in my case, I don't want to burn money. Like my number one thing is high profitability, right? I want like 80 plus 85% profitability margins. And these VCs, they don't care, right? They're losing money. They have negative profitabilities. And so I think it's that one. Or on the other side, you have obviously some people who still may be in a rush for whatever reason. But if you're like a true bootstrapper, and in my case, Invoiceberry pays the bills, then I have BlogHandy slowly growing and generating money. But I had enough time to set up a system, SEO, to slowly grow. If you have like, hey, here, $20,000 to grow this business, to make enough money to pay for you, then you're obviously a bit more in a rush. But if you can actually, fund it from your own, like other projects as a bootstrapper, and I meet a lot of bootstrappers who have multiple projects, right? In your own community and startup source, right? So there are some people with like 2, 3, 4 projects, and the one funds the next one, and so on, and you build sort of your like SaaS holding, or some people call it like the tiny empires and whatnot, so you build that up, and then you actually really want to look for profitability. You rather have like a few projects generating 5,000 here, 10,000 there, 2,000 there, and slowly growing, rather than putting it all in ads and potentially just wasting it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, I think that if you make paid ads work, it's amazing because you put $1 in the top of the machine and spit out $1.20, and you can do that all day long, every day. But the process of getting there involves often burning through huge amounts of money. It takes months, even if you know what you're doing. I think, yeah, I generally encourage most early stage startups start with either cold email or content or both, because they don't cost a lot of money, and they help you refine your messaging a lot faster. Once you've got your funnel, somewhat optimized, then you can maybe experiment with paid ads. But even then, I'd be more likely to maybe go after affiliates or something like that, because you're only paying when you get an actual paid customer versus paying for someone to just come to your website one time. So let's talk a little bit more about the content marketing side of things, because this is something you've got very deep expertise in. Can you talk me through some of the content marketing tactics that you've used successfully in the past that work really well? And if you were starting a business right now today and you were setting up a content marketing system, what would that look like?
I mean, content marketing is massive, right? So it's sort of could be SEO, could be, internal linking, building backlinks, blog posts, lead magnets, landing pages, videos, in a way, podcasts, and so on, like anything that generates any noise or content. So if we look at that, for us, it's been successful to blog either about very specific issues people have. Let's say how to add a blog to your Bubble app. It's a very specific thing. You might ask yourself, we don't even look at keyword data, Hrefs, SEMrush, whatever. We just know we have Bubble users using us right now. And previously, we just assumed we could get them. We wanted to target them. So we don't look at SEO tools at that stage. We're just saying, it doesn't matter if 10 people or 100 or 1,000 look for it. We know that Bubble is a big platform. We know that there's an issue and we're solving it. We're solving a problem. So we have a blog post for it and we're ranking well for it. And that's sort of it. So if you start your SaaS and you can identify either another solution that sort of works with your solution or a specific problem that you're solving, this is always one of the first things I would write about. In Invoiceberry's case, let's say that would be the, top things to do on an invoice, or what is an invoice in general, because a lot of business people, they start their business, they don't know how to create an invoice. So we have blog posts explaining them how to create an invoice by themselves, so like in Word or in Excel. And obviously then we're plugging Invoiceberry within that blog post. So I think my number one advice would be, whatever the problem is you're solving, sort of write blog posts, almost like you would have on your landing pages, where you talk about the benefits of your tool and what problem you're solving, sort of elaborate on that in the blog posts. That's probably one of the first things I would do on blog posts before I even start looking at keyword tools to look at which keywords are good to rank for and so on. And then obviously look at your industry. So at Invoiceberry, we said, okay, we have a lot of cleaning businesses using us. We have a lot of plumbers. So what other content are they interested in? You don't need tools for that. You just, need a brainstorming session by yourself, or go to the pub, talk to a few friends, or, talk to a customer who is a plumber and ask them, what other tools are you using? What other things are you doing in your, like on the business side, right? What are you struggling with? This might also be part. So part of our content marketing is having good segmentation questions. So when someone signs up in the onboarding, we ask them a few questions, right? Like how many invoices they send, like what's they're trying to accomplish, and so on. And then we learn, their language, what they're saying, and sort of what they're struggling with. And so also part of like customer interviews, like or customer support, right? So that's another great way of creating blog posts and creating good content marketing. And this is sort of all the blog stuff before you do anything technical, like going to Ahrefs and, finding what are the top blog posts and what are my competitors blogging about and whatever. You don't have to do any of that. You already have your first probably 20 to 50 blog posts covered by just the thing mentioned now. And of course, then you can go to your competitor, check what they're writing about and write some like a better version of the same blog post, let's say. I think the first 20 to 50 blog posts are easily covered just with your internal data by not even looking anywhere else. And it's very similar with the landing pages or lead magnets. So at Invoiceberry, we said, okay, where are we in the customer journey? And as I mentioned earlier, we don't want to be an accounting package. We used to say we light accounting because people didn't seem to get the idea of invoicing alone. So we said light accounting, but we dropped that and we said, no, we're like invoicing and expense tracking. And we're very sure that this is our market. So in the journey, there are basically three markets. There's someone who wants an invoice template or writes and there's us, and then there's an accounting package. And we know we're here. And we can generate lead magnets actually for the step before. So we started creating invoice templates. So you can Google for invoice templates, you come to our website, you download a free invoice template as a PDF, as a Word, as an Excel, as in like all different formats and styles, and you get it completely for free. So coming back to the question, if you're building a SaaS right now, how can you attract your customers? To build like free tools or free templates or free resources around what they're looking for, right? So sort of the step before, because these are small businesses and they're looking for just any solution to send an invoice. They don't know if they need an invoicing software. They might even think they need an accounting package because that's what they heard someone talk about in the past. But when they find a template, they're like, oh, yeah, cool, I just need a template. And then obviously they see the website and they leave their email address. And, you obviously then they get subscribed to our emails if they want, and they get some more information. And, they might end up signing up for Invoiceberry. So the important part there is, to add value, right? Like with everything we do in marketing, if it's like being on social media or if it's doing SEO or blog posts, to add value. To not just do it for Google, to not just do it for anyone, but like to do it for that potential customer. And I think you can already the first few tools or lead magnets that way. And then you can just say, hey, what else do they need, right? So if we looked at Invoiceberry, we see small businesses, they're often, like when in their life do they look at invoicing? Quite early on, right? After the first few customers, maybe after the fifth customer who asks like, hey, I need an invoice. That's when they look. So this is quite early. So they might also look for a business plan because they maybe want a bank loan and they need a business plan. So we offer them business plans. We offer them blog post business plans. We offer them information about business bank accounts in the US or in the UK. Why? Because that's sort of what interests that person, that small business owner at that time, most likely, when they're looking for an invoicing software. So you have to think about your ICP. What interest, like what's on the agenda right now, like this week, what's on the to-do list? Is it like to look for like a business banking account? Oh, wow. If they Google that and they find your blog post, and then maybe that week or the next week, it was also on the list to look for an invoicing software. So, them reading our blog post, being happy about it, and then seeing, the Invoiceberry information there, they might sign up for it in the same step. And that's sort of the thinking there to just think about your ICP and just think about their week. What are they doing right now? And this doesn't involve usually for me anything analytical, like in terms of like not looking at any Google Analytics or looking at Ahrefs or any SEO tools. This is just human to human, what's going through their mind right now, and let's create content. If it's a lead magnet, if it's a resource, or if it's a blog post, like create something of value to them right now for this time.
So your starting point isn't to load up Ahrefs or SEMrush or something and just figure out which keywords and which keywords have volume, which keywords have low keyword difficulty. You're not even starting with that stuff. You're starting with, okay, well, who have I got that's actually using my tool right now? Let's create some content for them, and then let's think about what else is going on in their life right now. What's a big pressing concern? Because I haven't heard too many people talk about getting in the minds of your customer and thinking about what they need right now, or what other concerns they've got in their business or their life right now, and creating content around that. Because on the one hand, it's like, well, if you have an invoicing tool, why are you creating guides on how to set up a business? But when you explain it in the context of, I'm setting up my business, I'm going to need this, I'm going to need that, I'm going to need a bank account, and I'm probably going to need an invoicing tool as well. It's very easy to kind of naturally insert Invoiceberry into that conversation. That makes a lot of sense. That's smart. I like it.
Yeah. I think with the tools, what a lot of people are doing, we're optimizing for machines and for, it also takes a lot of time to research. And if you were to take half an hour in a pub or a coffee shop to just write down a bunch of thoughts that come to your head, and I mean, you can cross it out, like ranking for the word invoicing software, right? The first 5 results are Google Ads anyways. And then, like the big guys are ranking there, or like even Forbes or whoever, because, they have their own like parasite SEO and whatnot. But then, if you think more about the specific smaller pain points and so on, there's naturally less keyword difficulty, most likely. So if I were to put a lot of the stuff we've done in the past into any of the tools, it anyway would sort of give me that information. It would just confirm basically more or less what I already know naturally. And it's partly because I've been in set space for so long, but also it's common sense in a way, at least in my opinion. It sort of makes sense if you think about it. But yeah, of course, another step is to look at the keyword tools, at the SEO tools, and to just get some additional ideas. And I'm not saying we're not doing that. We're going back to them from time to time, but it's not that I'm every day checking what's happening there.
Do you have any sort of mental frameworks around what makes a good keyword? Like, is there a certain volume that you look for, or a certain keyword difficulty, or a certain anything else that kind of leaps out? Okay, how do you? I guess what does your decision-making framework look like when you're deciding which keywords to target?
It's quite difficult. So in some of the side, and I said earlier, we said no side projects, but in some of the side projects where you obviously have a new domain and you're just playing around, I'm trying to obviously do, so we talk about niche things, right? So I'm trying to get a very low keyword difficulty, 15, 20, like not really over 20. And that usually means it's a low search volume. It's not going to be a search volume of 20,000 and a difficulty of 5, right? So that's like like the golden egg, right? It doesn't really exist nowadays anymore. There's probably some automated AI bot who scrapes the stuff and creates a page automatically, and that's it, right? But and the thing is, for Invoiceberry as well as for BlogHandy, we have quite strong domain ranks, domain authority, and so we can also target bigger keywords. So it's not that important, right? And especially at Invoiceberry, we also at BlogHandy, depending what we're targeting, but I'm not targeting, for example, blog, right? I'm not trying to compete with WordPress on those keywords or with Squarespace or whatever, but especially with Invoiceberry, like invoice software is as well super competitive. So we're trying to go more long tail. And I mean, with the long tail keywords, you sort of have your clusters of keywords, and you naturally just all of the landing pages within that cluster then grow together. So you don't have to have tens of thousands or even 1,000 searches a month maybe there. I also do feel that looking at Ahrefs data, often you can just double whatever numbers they tell you. That might be just maybe, like if you look at the US number, so I usually just double it in my mind, because like there's a bit of, Canada, Australia, UK added to it, like quite a bit of India. And unless there's like different terms being used in the countries, you usually can easily double or even like 3x it, the number. And So I'm happy with like a volume of 500. And it obviously depends on the intent, right? If there's a big purchase intent, I'm happy with like 100 searches. If I know that I can rank high, I get a bunch of visitors and they're sure to convert, why not? So it really depends how close, let's say a keyword like free invoice templates, where we used to be one or two, then we dropped over the years, but we're still sort of competing at a high level. But we used to get like tens of thousands of visitors a month just from one page and one keyword. But they didn't convert in a lot of signups. Or they did convert in a decent amount of signups, but not in a lot of payers. So, because obviously in a SaaS, you have like your multiple steps, right? And we used to have a freemium version. Now we only have a free trial, but you still get your signups, a free trial without a credit card. So it's sort of almost like freemium. So you get your signups, you have your people in your email system, they get their emails, but if they don't use it, if they're not active, they're not going to start paying. And so, for example, for that keyword, we used to be really high, and it was a very competitive keyword. I think it had like a difficulty even back then of 70 plus, and we were number one or two, but I just didn't care about dropping and like competing in this keyword, because especially there's the word free in it, right? Free invoice template. So the person shows their intent. I'm looking for something free. If I'm looking for, let's say, an invoice template for XYZ and it gets more long tail, the difficulty goes a bit down. It's easier to rank. And I have maybe only 1,000 or 2,000 search volume, but I still get a good amount of signups and people are actually happy to spend. That might be way much more valuable than that other keyword with 50 or 100,000 search volume. So it really depends. And this is not really shown by the tools, obviously. But there should be a mixture if you analyze it by volume, keyword difficulty, and by like the sort of purchase intent, let's say.
So those are the three things you look at. Okay. How do you have any tips or tactics or secret ninja moves for acquiring backlinks?
So we've done a number of things, producing good blog content for sure, right? So naturally you get your backlinks. Let me just dump a bunch of things onto you. And I think any bootstrapper who starts off, they pick like a few of them. So in general, good quality content always works. Then current topics, while I'm basing 90% of our blog posts, or actually at the moment 100%, on evergreen content that you literally can share years later and you drive your traffic, because I like to pay once to the writer and I just keep on getting traffic. We did try in the past a bit of current topics around Brexit when it happened. We wrote a bit about and about Pokemon Go. And that was actually the last blog post I wrote myself. So I'm not sure how many years ago, but my content writer was ill at the time and I decided to write the Pokemon Go article. And I remember writing it, and actually a few days later we got a Forbes backlink, because Forbes picked up Pokemon Go back then when this whole craze was and everyone was walking around with their phones out, and they linked to my blog post as like a reference. So that was nice to get a backlink from Forbes, and also to show to my content editor, my content writer at the time, that, wow, it's like literally the one blog post I wrote this year, and I straight away get a Forbes backlink, not bad. So it motivated him to also produce good work. Little side story, but yeah. So I think sometimes picking up on current topics can help, because then, other journalists might pick it up, which also gets me to the third idea, help a reporter out. So you can subscribe to haro.com or .net or whatever the website is. And so it's help a reporter out. And you basically sign up, you take sort of your interests, and they send you, I think, 3 emails per day about different journalists looking for input from experts in that industry or in that subject matter. So then you can quickly scan it. And if you know something, about that specific industry, let's say about blogging or about invoicing or also about content marketing, I know a lot. So I might reply to them and I pitch them my reply, say, might add it to their blog or website or whatever. And they usually send link back to you. And also it's a nice way of sort of building up authority in the industry. That's quite time intensive, and obviously it's not guaranteed that they publish you, but it is an option, right, to try out and to see if it works for you. The other thing is sort of hand in hand with that, to do guest posting. So we used to do a lot of guest posting, where we just reach out to a lot of websites and offer them, hey, can we write some high quality content for you? We would pitch them some ideas that sort of are in line with the existing content on their blog. So we give them free content, but also where we can either link to some of our content or where we can sort of plug BlogHandy or Invoiceberry within the text. Usually you have to be very careful, like what links you add to it. But you at least get into the author box your link back to your website. So we used to actually do probably around 20 blog guest posts per month at some point.
Right.
So the other thing, hand in hand with that, some people say guest posting got replaced by being a guest on podcasts, because normally on podcasts you get also your link somewhere. So, depending on how big the podcast is and how they have their website and whatnot, you might get a backlink there. And a lot of these, so especially with guest posting, for example, again, like even if you're just starting off and you're bootstrapping, if you're like an expert in your industry, what you're doing, it's probably quite easy for you to write a guest post on someone else's blog. And then you just have to understand that you shouldn't reach out maybe to Forbes or Business Insider, but basically it goes by domain ranks or by size. So you first go to the small blogs, they're more likely, to reply to you and to work with you. And once you have a portfolio of a few guest posts published on a small blog, you go to the medium-sized blogs, and then you can go to the big guys. So I had like guest posts on Campaign Monitor and Active Campaign and like Jeff Bullers and some of the really big blogs. But I didn't straight away go there. We basically worked our way up. And you sort of slowly build up your links and your link profile. I think those are usually good. Obviously, the other thing is to build, like if it's not about blogging, if you maybe build some tools or resources, and then as well, people naturally might link to you. So we have, for example, a free invoice generator. We have like a PayPal and Stripe fees calculator, which doesn't only rank on Google, but also some people link to it as a resource. And that's, also how you can obviously build up some backlinks by just, adding some value where people saying, oh, this is worth linking to, right? If you think yourself, whenever you, let's say, send out a newsletter or when you talk in your podcast or when you write a blog post, what would I link to? Like, why would I link to it? What would I link to? And that's basically what you should do. Again, just, thinking from a human perspective, what makes sense, like adding value, help a reporter out. You're actually adding value to someone's piece of content, writing a guest post, you're adding value to their blog. Having a tool, especially with AI nowadays, there are loads of these tools, let's say like a name generator or whatnot, right? There are like millions of them, but like, coming up with like a tool that fits into your SaaS and building it out maybe in like a day or two. And then, you don't only rank maybe on Google for it, but you also can build backlinks to it. And obviously you can ask people for their email address to use it and so on and so on. So I think that would be the first few steps of building backlinks.
I love that idea about the tools and the calculators. I think a lot of people, so in my experience with lead magnets, people have white papers and ebooks, and I've never seen them convert particularly well, just because I've already read a bunch of information. I don't want to have to give you my email address to read more information. The best lead magnets I've seen have been ones that will help you take action a little bit faster. So it's a checklist. It's a list of tools or resources. It's a discount code. It's a now that I've read the blog post, I've got the information. Now I want to take action. I want something that's going to help me take action or do it a little bit faster or condense the time that it takes for me to get from A to B. But I think for a lot of SaaS founders, especially if you're technical, you could put together a calculator or some simple little tool that will be very useful. But I think a lot of developers kind of get stuck in this mindset of, oh, well, everyone knows how to do this. Most of the world doesn't. And I think a lot of technical founders forget that. So just by taking a day to code up some little calculator, that can actually be a hugely valuable lead magnet, hugely valuable thing that people can link to. And that's probably some really easy low-hanging fruit if you just think about your audience, especially if you're in a space where your audience is not technical at all, and that there's no chance they'd be able to put something like that together themselves. Uwe, just a couple of last questions. What is your most controversial opinion about building a SaaS business?
So that's a very good question. So one of them might be to not do the paid ads and landing page thing we discussed earlier. I do think I'm sort of against the trends there. The other thing is, while I like some of the stuff Paul Graham talks about, and you should be embarrassed of your first version of your product and so on, I do feel there's this trend with bootstrappers, and especially with indie hackers, where they're taking it to the extreme, where they say, oh, you have to ship it with bugs, and you have to ship it, you don't need this and that in your product. And at the beginning, I heard people say, oh, you don't need dark mode in your product. Okay, fair enough. I don't have it in any of my products, and I'm probably never going to add it to them. And I understand that point. But then people say, oh, you don't need a logo. You don't need a title tag. You don't need, and people keep adding things to it. And some people take it actually serious. So initially I thought these are just jokes, but actually people take it serious. And I'm looking at some products being launched, and I feel, no, this is not, that's not acceptable. And this comes from the things that I'm sort of a perfectionist, and I'm never happy. So after 15 years and multiple complete rebuilds of Invoiceberry, I'm still not happy about it. And I'm never going to be happy, because whenever I look at any website I ever created, it just feels not as nice as it should. And this is just the internal perfectionist, right? If, let's say, you look at the Apple website, right? And everyone looks at it and it's just a beautiful piece of art. But I can promise you, if I had built it, I would say, no, it looks rubbish. Because it's just this thing, this obsession, let's say, with like there's always something missing. And I do feel, and this comes because I want to be very proud of my products. And I could see that when I first launched, when I had the idea of BlogHandy over 5 years ago, and then I finally started coding it, and I kept on being interrupted by family and by Invoiceberry, so I stopped it. And at some point, I gave it to a programmer and a designer, and they worked on it while I just supervised it. And I was never really proud of it. And we launched it, and it didn't really take off, and it didn't, like it got customers, it got some payers, but it just didn't feel right. And actually, once I took it in my own hands again, and I actually, let's say, fixed it, I felt like, oh, wow, I'm starting to feel proud of that. It's sort of my baby. And it was partially, obviously, something emotional, but also because I just know exactly where to look. Because I talked to the customers, and there was this disconnect of me talking to customers and me understanding it, and someone else programming it. And once I combined that in one person, in me, I could really sort of put it into the product. And now the product has that, and it's just like 10x not only with signups and payers and everything, like all the statistics, but it also like I'm proud of it. And, this shows up in the product, in the communication, in the emails and everything. And so coming back to what's controversial, that I really think if you just ship something or anything and you're like happy to have bugs and to not have this and that, how can you be proud of your product? How can you be proud of what you produced, right? So yeah, I really dislike that idea of giving bad quality. It's almost like a restaurant on purpose giving you, trying to give you bad steaks. I mean, I don't get it, right? If I go to the steakhouse, I want the best steak possible, right? And not some random overcooked, burnt piece of meat,
Or here's a steak, but there's no plate and there's no knife and no fork, and just do your best. I think sometimes people get too caught up in when people talk about an MVP, they focus far too much on the minimal side of things, and they don't focus enough on the viable side of things. And certainly you probably agree with me. Most categories of SaaS now, there are lots of competitors. They're all selling something that pretty much does the same thing, pretty much at the same price point. And so if you try and enter a pretty mature market and your product is just so much worse than everything else that's already out there, like the bar for what is considered viable is probably a lot higher now than it was when the idea of an MVP was first popularized. So yeah, I think that's excellent advice. Kind of controversial too. Uwe, it's been a pleasure, buddy. Listen, if anyone is interested in finding out more about your products, your businesses, or in getting in touch with you, where do they go? Can you kind of just tell us the website addresses, the email addresses, contact information?
So yeah, anyone who needs invoicing, invoiceberry.com. And then if you want to email me, uwe@invoiceberry.com. And for the blogging, it's bloghandy.com or uwe@bloghandy.com. And I'm trying to get more and more active on X or Twitter. It's Uwe Dreiss, UWEDREISS, where I'm trying to, be a bit more in touch with the no-code community, with the blogging community, but also with some small business owners. So, watch out there. But yeah, always feel free to drop me an email as well.
Fantastic. Mate, it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much for coming on today. And I hope anyone listening to this or watching this got a lot of value out of some of the advice you had to give.
Awesome.
We'll speak again soon, mate.
Thanks a lot.
Have an awesome day.
For having me on the call.